Hello, Rob. You're here and Sarah Ruberg with our Thrive Tribe, and we're gonna jump into a conversation on social media, talk about pitfalls, problems that are common in the world of, I'm a dentist and I want to do better or get started with social media. Maybe I don't know where to begin, or maybe you've been doing it and you don't know if it's quite so successful, and so Sarah and I are here going to talk about it. Sarah's been in social media marketing for many years, and I look forward to picking her brain with some of my questions that should help you as a dentist navigate the black hole of digital marketing, social media, and maybe there's some other bonus topics, Sarah, that we could jump into. But let's get it started around the idea of, all right, I'm a doctor and I'm really not doing anything with social media yet, and I want to. I don't know how to get started. It seems overwhelming. Do I need to hire an agency? Could I just get started with organic? Maybe let's start there. Like, I would propose, I would think that a great place to start would be organic social media, just creating some type of valuable content. Like, so what would be your advice for me if I just want to get started? What should I do, like week one, month one, to just start posting and engaging online in a way that could start to build some success?
I think in order to answer that first, we should talk about why they should do that. I'm reading
Love
this
it.
amazing
Start with
book called
why.
Why? Because I'm reading this amazing book called The Plan, and she says belief has to come before behavior. So
Hmm.
if we don't believe in what it is that we're doing, then we're more than
Love it.
likely not going to do it. And so whether, and I was thinking about this today, I'm going to use an example. I love analogies, and I don't know if this will resonate with everyone, but for a woman who wants to go get my hair done, I go to Instagram, and not only am I looking at salons or am I presented with salons in my area, but I'm also presented with stylists in my area who might also
Hmm.
work at one of the salons that has come up in the search that I'm doing. So I think it's important, whether you're an associate, whether you're a doctor owner, I think it's really important to understand that social media is a great place that consumers look for healthcare providers. And so it's not just important to build a corporate brand, but it's also important to build your personal brand, to build that trust, because there's so much there. We're saturated with clinicians, right? So what's your unique selling proposition? It's more than likely you as an
Hmm.
individual. And so whether, again, you're the doctor owner promoting the practice or just promoting yourself, it's really important to put yourself out there because it can help people make decisions as to whether or not they want to come see you. I will ramble on with one more example. I was trying to find a provider for myself, a doctor, like my regular PCP, and I saw a video on this website of this woman, and I clicked on it. She's one of the providers. And Rob, she used to be a rockette, like Radio
Wow.
City, New York rockette. And I, that doesn't have anything to do with whether she's a good doctor, she has experience. I have seen the Rockettes every year since 1986 as a tradition with my family, with my father. And so you bet I was like, her, she's it. I'm going to her. And she ended up being amazing. But stuff like that makes a difference
Hmm.
to people. So
You know,
I
you
think it's
you're making a
important.
point. I heard someone tell me that you have to believe in the person before you buy from them, right? And I think you're touching on that, right? Like, what about me as a provider? Can someone find trustworthy and believe in before they're going to buy from me? And I think you're kind of honing in on that reality. But back to your point, so why should I believe in social media? Like, what about it as an avenue is useful, beneficial? Like, why is it worth my time? Maybe convince me. If I'm a doctor, I was like, I don't really care about social media. Why should I care?
a lot of times these practices will get involved in locally in their community, right? And maybe they'll have like it's the holidays right now. They might have like a holiday market, and maybe a dental practice will go and will go there to, show their support, have a table, whatever. And their goal is to meet people in the community, right? That's usually the goal as to why you go as a vendor or a sponsor. But if you really think about it, you could, in the comfort of your own home or office, seek out a larger portion of your community through social media and engage with them on that platform. And so I think and oftentimes when even industry partners or vendors ask me, why should we use social media? They spend so much money going to these conferences, waiting for people's conversations to be done so they can talk to them, when you could be at home on your cellular device, not waiting for them to get done at all. If they post something on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and you could immediately engage with them. So it's easier to grow organically than I think a lot of people realize, but you have to be able to put the time and effort into it. So you have the content, which is important, but also outward engagement. So instead of going to these community events, or even doctors who are trying to build referral relationships, they can use social media for that too. And talk
So
to
you
them.
just said content's important, which I agree. And I have some strong opinions on this, but I'll ask you first, like, give me some examples of like really great content that's engaging. And obviously this is a doctor trying to connect with patients, potential patients or existing patients. What type of content would you recommend they produce for that engagement? And what type of content would you recommend they not produce because it might be boring or glossed over or just dismissed?
Can we start with that one first, which one I don't recommend, because I want people to remember
Perfect.
this?
Yeah.
I think when we're experts in something, right, we're really proud of it. We're passionate. And when we want to talk to people about it, we oftentimes talk in our terms. So when you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, well, you're like, my elbow hurts. Well, the trajectory of your femur bone and the blah, 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 and all these things. And you think you know what they're saying, right? You're like, yeah, mm-hmm. And you get home and your significant other's like, so what'd the doctor say? And it's like, I have no idea. I think he said the word
Yeah.
trajectory. I don't even know how to spell that. I don't know what that means. Obviously, a doctor is more than likely not going to use that term, but I feel clinicians do that a lot. So I'll see dentists who want to post on their public feed like graphic, like surgeries, clinical things like that. Please don't do that. It's gross. And like,
Here's a good point. Here's a good point, though. If a doctor's trying to network as a speaker, or like he's trying to network with implant companies or other providers as an educator or like a keynote speaker, then I do think a content that's driven around their excellence as a clinician, their photography, their workflow, for sure, that's a whole category of an audience. But if you're trying to connect with patients don't really want to see blood and, knee deep in the mouth. Like, so if this is patient centric awareness or engagement, what types of things do you see that's successful in like a doctor engaging with the non-dental community?
that was a really good point that you made too. And I should have specified, because you're right. It depends on what it is that you want to achieve. And if you want to be an educator and speaker, that would definitely could potentially be a good thing to post. But as far as relating with your patients or potentially relating to patients, people want to know what kinds of things you like to do. If you like to, ride a motorcycle, people want to know that kind of stuff. People buy people, not products or services, similar to what you said. So if you're to build trust with patients, before and afters are great, but try to skip those. Did you know that red toothbrushes are more commonly purchased than blue ones? Or today's National Donut Day, things, unless it specifically applies to oral health care, like National Tooth Fairy Day, that could be important to celebrate, but something that provides an insight to you as a person, so that when they do come
Yeah.
to see you, they almost feel like they know you a little bit.
I am a big advocate of bringing something of generous value to your audience. I think so, knowing your audience, right? So if you're a doctor and you're trying to be a keynote speaker, you should probably have a separate Instagram account or a separate social account that's putting that content out there, your case flow, your, photography, all that. And you should have a separate one for your, community or your potential patients engagement. But, what could you as a dentist deliver to a patient that they would actually care about? That, of course, I think the humanity side of like riding a motorcycle, or maybe you're fishing, a fly fisherman, or whatever, that's great. You're a normal human. But then what about my oral health could you help me with or serve me with that might be of interest to me, right? Maybe it's something related to, a mouthwash or flossing, or, you know, periodontal disease and why that's connected to other parts of your body. I think there's some messages, and like, I guess I'm now answering the question for you, Sarah, and I guess you tell me if you think I'm on the right track. If a doctor is delivering valuable content to people that they actually want to consume, it means it's generous, it's insightful, it's a blessing to them. And then at the end, it's like they know you're a doctor, and they know, like, you can have a link or a call to action to your website or your 800 number or whatever. But I really think delivering generous content is one of the pillars. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that you call it generous. I usually call it DIY, and it's
Hmm.
to create content in regards to tell people how they can do for themselves what they could essentially hire you to do for them. Obviously, they cannot place an implant in their own mouth. Like, that's not necessarily what I mean. But when you say generous, like give to give. So there's lots of educational things. I like it when clinicians believe or want to share, like, hey, here are 3 things to look out for. If you're in the market to get a dental implant, doesn't necessarily have to be from us, but here's 3 things that you should look for when you are looking at an implant, like having an implant placed, or is it an oral surgery practice? Like, this is what
Hmm.
it means if it's a general dentist or we're not educated when it comes, patients are not educated when it comes to dentistry.
Hmm.
We just aren't. And so we're just out here looking at price. Oh, and I know I keep focusing on implants, or even a cleaning, right? Like down the street, they've got a $75 special for a cleaning as a new patient. That doesn't make them a good practice. What is it that makes them a good practice? And I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but to answer your question, content that gives people the feeling they're not saying I have to go to them. They're just
Yes.
educating me as an individual. And I think that feeling draws people to practices, to people, and makes them trust them because they don't feel pressured. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And when you're talking about an implant and a missing tooth, if a doctor were to, approach a post, a video content to a patient, say, what are your options for a missing tooth? You could get a flipper, which is just a single tooth on like a retainer, a flipper. You could get a 3-unit bridge, or you could get an implant. And that's kind of your spectrum of cost. And then just educate the patient on, yes, it would be the cheapest to get a flipper, but no one really wants a flipper. So then the middle of the road is a 3-unit bridge. But what are the pros and cons of a 3-unit bridge, right? One of the downsides of a 3-unit bridge is you're going to take 2 natural teeth adjacent and you're going to prep them. So now you're going to, in a sense, grind away God's gift of 2 healthy teeth to have 2 posts to put a 3-unit bridge. And then you're going to have a ponic or this missing tooth replacement. And so it's a perfectly acceptable procedure, but it's not going to prevent bone loss or bone resorption. A 3-unit bridge will destroy 2 natural teeth, and you will have bone resorption over time. And the longevity of a 3-unit bridge is, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. I mean, it can last a really long time if the margins are good, the margins are sealed. But if you get a dental implant, educating the patient on activating the bone, titanium being biocompatible, and then when you have that force stimulating the bone is what keeps the bone from resorbing, right? And that's really one of the reasons why an implant is so valuable, is because it will last the longest. It doesn't destroy your adjacent teeth, and it keeps the bone from resorbing. So if a doctor were to just give that away without saying, come to me because my implants are the best and the cheapest, but if he just gives that away, I think that's where a patient would be like, oh, okay, I'm learning, I'm being educated, right? And then a doctor may be saying, if you're going to shop for an implant, here's the questions you should ask. Is it an all-inclusive fee, or do I have to pay extra if I need bone grafting? Do I have to go to a surgeon and then a general dentist separately, or am I going to get my whole procedure from you? I think a doctor could arm a patient. Many dental patients are cash patients, which means you are allowed to negotiate and you are allowed to ask questions. I tell all my friends, like, if you're a cash patient, do not be afraid of asking about the price, and do not be afraid about getting a couple quotes and seeing who you like, and does it come with a warranty, and are there any hidden fees? And I just think that there's a ton of opportunity for a doctor to be the expert and the guide to helping a patient make a decision and even ask intelligent questions. And I have this belief that if you're the one training and educating someone for free with the spirit of generosity, you also become the authority. And we are typically attracted to someone who is an authority. And I think at the end of that type of post and that education, the patient's going to naturally want to reach out to you and come to your website and see, well, I wonder how much this guy charges for an implant. What do you think about that?
I hope everybody that's watching this takes that chunk of everything that you just said and creates content with that. That was perfect because, and I mean, Rob, if whatever you want to do in life doesn't work out, I will certainly hire you to help me with content creation for social media. That was perfect. And because you're right, it does position them as the authority. So now you give them, I worked at a dental marketing company for 6 years and we did implant marketing. That's all that we did. And for specialists, and specialists would call us and say, we're not getting qualified leads. They're all shoppers. And they thought that shoppers were a bad thing. And we're like, actually, shoppers are a good thing because they're somewhat educated. They've now done a little bit of research. And plus, if they're shopping, they're more than likely very close to being ready to buy if they're, comparing pricing and things. So imagine if you, Dr. Rob, figure of authority, you give them all of these things and equip them to go shop. So now they're shopping all these other people, but holding them to your standard as to what it is that you said. And unless another practice is doing the same type of content, which so frequently they're not. They're just doing, we all had a barbecue, national happy, water bottle day, donut day, all these things. So
no one cares.
No one cares. No one does.
No one cares.
I mean, well, I care about National Unicorn Day, which is on April 9th because our company logo is a unicorn. So that I care about. But everything else,
never heard of it.
April
Never heard
9th,
of National
mark your
Unicorn
calendar.
Day. Okay.
Yes. There's a national everything kind of a day. But I think that was such a good point to make. And because you want to, and then you're just like, hey, take this information. And I love that. Questions to ask. One of the things I think clinicians and practices across or just at providers, I go get lip filler, Rob. no shame. But when I first started
All
getting
right.
lip filler, I I had no idea. And I'm a planner. I want to know, what do I do in advance? What happens during? What do I have to do afterwards? What's my downtime?
Hmm.
What does the practice look like? Who am I going to go see? I know I'm not the only person that does that. So even like pre, during, post-op, what to expect.
Hmm.
Also, talking about an implant, like before I knew anything about dental, I had to get an implant. I had no idea that I needed to make a decision right then and there if I wanted bone grafting, not knowing anything about bone grafting. They didn't educate me. Like, I didn't know. And also, like, what happens if you don't replace your tooth? There's a lot of people out there that are like, nothing's going to happen if I have this big gaping hole in my mouth. No teeth up above are going to move down. It's not going to mess up my bite. Like, there are negative repercussions if you don't replace your tooth. So what are those options too?
Yes.
Like, people just don't know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, bone grafting is an interesting thing because the material itself is very inexpensive. Sorry for spoiling the doctors out there. We'll just disclose to the patients that, you should negotiate an all-in fee, right? And doctors should just give an all-in fee, like it's one price, here's the procedure, here's what to expect. I think there's another post that you just came up with, right? Like your interest in lip filler, like before, during, and after. If a doctor just produced a video on, hey, if you get a single unit implant, here's what you should expect. Here's the process, here's the healing time, here's the final restorative outcome, and this is the long-term results that you should expect, and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think that's valuable. Another post hit my brain of orthodontic work in conjunction with restorative work. If a patient has really messed up teeth and they have some money and they just want like the smile makeover, you can go from zero to hero, and doctor and patient love it. But what patients don't realize is if your teeth are all messed up, the doctor's going to have to do more significant tooth preparation, which is grinding away your natural teeth. And the more you grind away, there's an argument for the weaker the teeth become, especially your lower centrals. If they're all messed up, your posts are going to be small. So why not consider orthodontic work? But it's going to cost you a little more money and a little more time. But there's actually if you got ortho and then veneers, that's going to be way better for you long term than if you just rushed into getting full coverage crowns. But a doctor should educate patients on why that matters, why they should consider it. It is an option. Yes, it will cost you more and take longer, but there's a huge benefit to it. And again, you could position yourself as the authority, as the guide in helping the patient make these really big financial decisions that are going to impact the rest of their life, because you never get God's teeth back, right? They're in a process of decay. We'll try to keep them healthy, but as soon as you start pulling them out, you're on a path towards, you don't replace natural teeth. You fix them and hope they last a long time.
Well, and sadly, there's also a lot of clinicians out there who are not so concerned about saving your teeth and are more concerned about, in any industry, right? Or more concerned about
Sure.
making, and I don't want to say that about our industry. I love our industry, but there are those people. And so educating people and giving them that opportunity to realize that, wow, this doctor is not necessary. They're not going to do that. Like, they're giving me all my options. And that makes people trust you even more. They're not, because it's sad to hear a lot of patients talk about, oh, my dentist just wants more money and I don't think I need that. And like, of course, now everyone's like a dental expert and they're like, I don't need that. You just want my money. And it's like, well, no, it's actually beneficial for your health, but it's just, so if you have somebody who's open and honest about, sure, you could do this, but this would be better, and it's actually less time consuming, maybe less downtime, less money, whatever it is, because we're driven, patients are driven by fear and cost for when going to the dentist. And so also, you'd mentioned videos. Video content is great. Not everybody loves to be on camera. You don't have to be, but it would be nice to show people, what does your bedside manner look like? What is it that you talk like? No one is going to watch this podcast and think, wow, if I ever met Sarah in person, she's going to be corporate and buttoned up. No. They're going to be like,
Nope.
homegirl celebrates National Unicorn Day. I doubt she's corporate and buttoned up. And so it gives people the ability to like relax and feel like they know you. It lowers that barrier of entry, and it can help to reduce fear because they don't have to wait to get to the practice to meet you. They've already kind of like a celebrity. There's plenty of celebrities that we follow on social media, and I want people to think about this. Don't you feel like if you walked up to a celebrity that you really follow closely, that you might kind of know them a little bit? Just a little, you know.
Yeah, and especially the younger generation. And I think this is something we need to, just recognize that as the younger generation, and younger can mean, 20 and 30 somethings now. And as they're getting older, they're more influenced by social content than they are by, other types of media. And so it's really a place you kind of have to be. It's not the single source, area of acquiring new patients, but it's for sure a medium that you should be engaged with and interested in. Tell me, how important is the website landing page? So like, all right, so the doctor said something that I was like, all right, kind of like this guy, gal, I want to check them out. Now I'm going to go to their landing page. What's your recommendation of if a landing page is viewed as the place where a new patient is landing to make a decision if they want to come to me? What are your recommendations on how to construct or message through your landing page to cultivate that person that's just coming for the first time?
Well, definitely do not use stock photography. Absolutely not. Like, and it's so
Clip art?
funny.
No clip art?
Clip. Oh my gosh. Remember the little paperclip guy? Oh my gosh.
Oh
What was his
gosh.
name?
It's the first thing you would
Uh,
uninstall when you had that Microsoft app. We must be
oh my
getting old,
gosh,
Sarah.
man. I was gonna say we're dating ourselves. Okay, let's move on. So I see people, I don't think people understand the importance of investing in custom photography. And I know it can be expensive. And if you're just a startup practice, like even hiring a local photographer to come in and take pictures so that it's more customized to you, I think that's important. And also including things about your why. So even if it's a single landing page, like if someone's doing marketing and they're marketing implants and they're driving somebody to this one landing page, I think the important things to share are, because they're more than likely looking at other people, who you are as a clinician and what is it that makes you a figure of authority. So even including information about pre, post, or pre, during, post, or what to expect. Or if you're obviously here because you're looking, for information about implants, and whether you get them here or somewhere else, we want you to be educated. So making sure to have that educational element and also highlighting you as a clinician, I think is important. And custom photography, because I think us as a society now, we can almost instantly determine whether you're a marketing expert or not. Like, that's a stock photo. That's not even real.
I agree.
So I think
that
I
I would even argue that having stock photography that was decent is infinitely better than having organic photography of your clinic that's decent is better than stock photography that's all, beautiful. Any recent iPhone of just wipe the lens with an alcohol wipe to get your smudges off. It's got an image stabilizer in it. If you took some, videos of your practice or some pictures of your practice, I mean, it's not a bad device to get started. Of course, a dentist should be able to afford a decent photographer coming in and taking photos. But also, I'm a big believer of, video content that feels a little more organic, a little more natural. And sometimes I think like a professional, overproduced setting where the doctor's like reading from a script and he's sitting with like a stethoscope, or I guess a dentist wouldn't wear a stethoscope, but like he's wearing his scrubs or whatever. I think it's important for a doctor to just be in a natural setting and be approachable and have content that is just normal and slightly unscripted, organic, where because if you feel like this guy's reading or gal's reading from a teleprompter, that's also, I think our antennas go up, right? And so I think sometimes we overthink professionalism and think that the more professional I make it, the better it will be. But I actually think there's like a law of diminishing return that if it looks really corporately produced, I think the younger generation kind of is keen on that versus if it's this person is just being real with me, they're just a normal human being just talking with me and helping me. What's your reaction to that?
I wrote down paralysis by analysis, because if we think about a clinician, I mean, I would suspect more than likely most clinicians, dentists, any type of clinician is somewhat of a perfectionist, right? Like, I mean, if you place an implant in your lower jaw, you've got to be like, I mean, sure, you have like your cone beam and stuff, but you've got to be precise. You don't want to hit a nerve. Like, so you have to have this level of perfectionism. And I think that sometimes translates over into really a lot of the things. So I often see people in general, I don't know what to post, or it has to be perfect. So definitely along the lines of what you said, nobody wants overproduced content. Some of the terms that I've heard that I kind of like are like quick and scrappy. Like all the celebrities, apparently the Kardashians, like when they're filming in their car, they'll purposely drop their phone to like be more human. Like, and it drops and then they just pick it up and they're like, well, we're just not going to start re-recording. We're just going to keep going because life just happens. Like, and people love that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to be overproduced. And there are things, because nobody likes that. There are things that you can use. You mentioned the stabilizer, and I don't want to get like too technical, but as far as like big productions, they have things called a gimbal, which is like you can put your phone on it and it just, stabilizes. They're like less than $50 on Amazon, and they're fairly simple to use, and it makes it look great. You can literally go around your office and it stabilizes, so it just looks like it's nice and smooth. And so I think that I 100% agree with you. If you see too much of a perfect video, I kind of think that's intimidating. Like, I don't know if I want to go somewhere that's like super, super polished. Like, I like to have fun. I don't want to be so serious, especially if I'm going to have work done in my mouth. Like, I want to know where I'm going is real and authentic. That's like the word in social media probably for like ever now is authenticity.
For sure. Authenticity matters a lot. And there's data you can look up for like user-generated content is more trusted than corporate-generated content. And what's interesting is the corporate guys are wising up to this. And I've actually seen some commercials that are made to look as though it's user-generated content, even though it's not. It's a studio, and they are paid professionals, but they're acting out if they're just recording on an iPhone and it's user-generated content. Like, it's super intentional by these big-budget people because they know that user-generated content is more trusted by means of this perception that it's more authentic, right? This, quick and scrappy, like you say. And I think there's something to that, which really for the average dentist right now, hearing this, it's like, just get started, just be real, be authentic, and, wipe your lens, take a decent photo or video, and people aren't going to like be mad at you that you didn't pay a producer to produce it, right? If the message is valuable and the message is generous, it will be consumed and people will watch and they'll engage for sure.
Absolutely. And I think too that oh my goodness, we were dating ourselves and now I'm 45 and I always like forget mid-sentence or thought what I was going to say, but in talking about you know what, I'll come back to it. Or it was like I feel like people come to podcasts and because I feel as though I'm an expert in social media, sometimes I make it seem complicated. So I do want people to walk away with like easy things to do. And also don't look at it's important to look at competitors in your area. It's not a bad idea to see what other people are doing. Sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to polish someone else's. But don't compare yourself. If there's like a flashy animated dentist like a couple doors down, that's okay. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to be like me. You really have to be yourself. And so be authentic. I would also say as a technical thing, if you were going to make videos, short and sweet. I think the longest you can make on Instagram is 90 seconds. So some of the things, Rob, that you were talking about, like in preparation or what's the difference between having a bridge or having a single implant, those could be individual videos because us as consumers can't retain all of that information. So I would say make your videos short and always make sure that you turn on the captions on your video because not everybody
Always.
has sound on when they're scrolling through their phone. And it's important to have it on, like have the captions on. So just like little things.
Uh,
And
uh,
one other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on that. If you Google search, we don't need to do it now, but if you're listening, Google search what percent of social media content is consumed with no audio. It's like above 80%, right? It's a high
Yeah.
percentage. So when you produce your content, turn the volume off and read your captions because most of the people will consume your content with the volume off because when they're in bed, either at night or getting up in the morning, or they're watching TV, right? We have our volume off. Only when we're like super interested, we'll like throw an AirPod in and turn the volume on because we want to listen, but that's like an exception. So for sure, captions and rewatch your content on mute with just the captions to make sure that it's good, it's engaging because that's how people consume it. So that's how you should produce it for sure.
That's smart. I'll have to look up that statistic. And I will say, while the content is important, I think one thing that can help set practices apart is outward engagement. So oftentimes when you engage with a social media agency or a marketing agency that's managing your social, I can't speak for all of them. I feel like they often focus primarily on the content and maybe some ads, but what I've seen that's worked really well on social media across all platforms is outward engagement. So what that means is if you live in a rural area and you want more implant cases, are there 50 plus influencers? I never knew that was a thing. We actually happen to have one in Tampa. Her like handles like confidence and adventure, and she is literally a 50 plus lifestyle influencer in Tampa. So are there people like that you can get involved with? Are there local groups
Yes.
that you follow on Instagram? Engage with them. That's that portion that you don't have to go to. You can go to a community event, but if you do, at the same time that you're engaging with people or someone on your team is, they're more than likely to recognize you. So finding people in your community, whether it's businesses, other practices that maybe you want referrals from, and just talking to them in the comment section on social media. That the content alone will not move the needle for you, but that will.
That's a really good point. Networking on social is just as important as in real life, and leveraging that social connection and that reciprocity is really important. Sarah, tell me, how many years have you been personally involved in social media professionally?
Oh gosh. Well, professionally, I would say, you're gonna laugh. 3, like dental marketing, probably like 15, but social media professionally, like since I started my business. And I've learned so much, and I'm just shocked by so many different things, and really learning about engagement. That's been the biggest eye opener for me, because a lot of people just don't think to do it. And it's a huge needle mover. So,
So 15 years in dental marketing. How'd you get
mhm.
started?
I was an event planner when I graduated, so I know how to plan a party and have a good time. And but I was the youngest director of sales for a company called GameWorks, which was owned by DreamWorks and Steven Spielberg. And I'm not sure, it's like a Dave and Buster's, and it was here locally. And I was the director of sales, and it was just nights and weekends, and it was too much. So I went to a career consultant, and she was like, "You should be in relationship management." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And so I went to Indeed and typed that in, and I found a job as a account manager for a dental marketing company. But I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about dental. And that's where I started. And I worked there for 6 years, and it kind of grew.
What are your key takeaways from that first 6 years? Like value points that you still carry with you?
Something I was referred to as the Swiss Army knife. This job was very impactful and instrumental. It was a startup. It was at different points very stressful, but it helped me understand a lot about myself. And I, for example, they called me the Swiss Army knife. So they were like, "You're good at everything." And I thought that was so cool, Rob. I was like, "Look at me. They can't put me in one spot. They're just moving me around because I can do everything." And when I left that job, I was like, "What am I actually really good at? What is it?" Because when you're called a Swiss Army knife, and they even had me as a project manager, which at the time I thought was so cool, but it was the most stressful thing I've ever gone through in my life. And that's because I'm not a project manager. I hate
Hmm.
operations. Ugh, gross. Get that out of here. But I didn't know that about myself. And so going through all of that, and hiring a life coach and asking her, "What is it that I'm good at?" And she told me to ask friends and family. And they told me I'm really good at building relationships. And I did not know that that was something not everybody is good at. And so I learned to laugh at the fact that they thought I'd be a good project manager, because I am not. But I
Good.
just didn't know that about myself. So I feel I'm more self-aware because of it.
That's amazing. Self awareness is huge. Being able to identify what you're not good at and what you don't like is for sure huge. A life skill I hope everyone develops, because if you can't recognize and talk about and articulate what you're not good at, I would just say you're pretty socially immature, and you've got some growing up to do. But from a marketing perspective, right? From like some key insights of how to be a good marketer for a dental practice. What are some of the takeaways from that perspective?
I think, and it's interesting because I worked there for 6 years as working with specialists, because at that point they're like, "Well, our referrals are drying up because general dentists are going and taking implant courses. So they're not sending them to us." So working with specialists, and then moving into the DSO space. So working at the DEO, and then another marketing company that specifically worked in the group practice space. One, I learned the difference between the two, which is huge. But as far as marketing goes, I think that it's really important for people to, I heard a lot people would say they're not qualified leads. And it was really sad for some of the reasons that they thought they weren't qualified. They don't sound smart. They sound young. They can't afford implants. And
Mm.
so I learned as far as marketing goes on the practice side, that you just never know. Like, you cannot financially profile somebody just by how they talk or whatever it is that they say. But I also know marketing patients, what I learned, marketing patients are a lot harder direct to consumer patients are a lot harder to convert than referrals. So you have to take the time and make sure that you utilize things like call tracking. I also found out that when we would start working with the client, we would say, "What's your phone conversion rate?" And they would be like, "Oh, it's 90%. We're excellent." And then we would go look at their recordings, and they were missing tons of calls. So I think if you're going to spend the money on marketing, you've got to make sure that your internal team is ready and equipped to talk to those
Hmm.
marketing patients because they're different. And so I think you and I talked earlier about what to do or things to look at when you're hiring a marketing company. Definitely ways that you can monitor your phone calls. I think that's super important. And also being aware that what your team is telling you that you're probably converting at, it's probably a little bit higher than they're probably leading on.
Yeah.
So, and not probably just because they don't know. So I would say make sure number one, if you're going to spend marketing money, make sure that you invest in the training of your internal team.
So that was going to be one of my questions was, all right, let's say I'm going to spend $1,000 a month. And I say, Sarah, help me spend it wisely. What's the best return on investment of $1,000 a month into marketing in general? Where should I spend that money? How should I spend that money to get a really good return? What would you say? Would you tell me?
I would have to ask a lot of questions. What are you currently doing? What's your goal? If you want more implant cases, for example, and I know I say that, but it's like everybody wants to place more implants, it seems. I would
Well, it's
say
the most
that,
profitable procedure in the clinic.
right. I love it
Sorry.
when people are like, well, I just really enjoy the surgery. I'm like, yeah, and the pay's probably not that bad either.
Yeah.
I do know that people enjoy it. I'm not saying. Um, so that's a hard question to answer. There's so many different things. If you're not utilizing social media right now, then you maybe spend it there. If and not even on paid advertising, like organic. If you haven't done anything organic, that's where I would start because you might be surprised at how well that will work. But not just with content creation, you have to in addition to responding to people who comment on your stuff, that's reputation management, outward engagement. I would honestly start there. And not
Hmm.
even I don't even know if it's like put $1,000 into it. If you don't have the time to manage it yourself, then I would probably hire someone else to do it for you, whether it's someone on the team or an outside company. But I would start with organic because if you were to start with paid advertising and maybe you don't even have an Instagram and people are going to see your paid ad and then maybe try to find you on Instagram and you're not there, that's
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
good.
No,
So,
I totally agree. And some of that budget money could be dedicated towards an internal staff person who's working at your front desk. And you just say, look, a portion of your job, a couple hours a day, is to take this company issued iPhone, would be pretty inexpensive, and just record content with patients, with doctors, with staff, and just record a lot of content, knowing that we'll choose what we like and what's generous and beneficial and is worthy to be published. But it takes time, right? Someone's got to do it. And capturing a volume of organic content gives you something to choose from versus like spending 100 hours to prepare for one shoot. Why not just spend 20 hours shooting, and then you're going to capture some gems, some things that are valuable. Sarah, I wanted to chat about our Thrive Tribe, your business. Like, how could you help a general dentist or a surgeon in their practice? Like, what do you do, and how could you help?
We talk about social media a bunch, but which is kind of where we got started. And I love it because it's great to build relationships. But we do have a full service marketing agency. And so we can handle emails, email campaigns, targeted campaigns through paid ads. So we can do any of those kinds of things. But my favorite part is, and we didn't even talk about personal brand. Before you even really start to promote yourself, you have to understand yourself. What is your personal brand? What do people say about you when you're not in the room? What are the things that are important to you? How do you dress? How do you talk? And so I think so yes, we can help with those kinds of things. I'm not good at self-promotion. We're a marketing company. That's that.
Great. Great.
There you
Um,
go. There you go. I'm such a hot mess.
no, but that's good.
Uh,
I know there are many doctors out there. I was talking to a dentist friend of mine. He's like, I'm paying this company X $1,000 a month and I think they're crap. My gut says I'm wasting my money. And so how would a doctor even know? Like, what are some key metrics, or like, what should a doctor expect as far as like, what type of reporting would you give back to your client? Say, hey, here's where we're being successful. Here's where we're not being successful. Like, what should a doctor expect to see as a measurable of, am I getting a good return on my spend?
That's a great question. And that's a question that in all these Facebook groups and everybody that I meet, they're like, how do you determine ROI or that this marketing campaign is successful? And so I'll answer it in two parts. Organic social media content, like grassroots, that's a long haul game, right? That's just
Yeah.
for brand awareness so that people, if they want to know more about you. So it's hard to identify direct leads that come from social media. So you have engagement numbers, follower counts, like you have all of those, what they call vanity metrics to measure, but very rarely can you say that lead came specifically from social media. So I just want to make sure, and I'm not saying that because it's an excuse to not include reporting. It's hard to do sometimes. So there's that type of information reporting, but most of the time for ROI, in regards to if they're doing digital marketing, email campaigns, all of that kind of stuff with a marketing company, I would just make sure that their reporting is transparent, but that also one thing I've seen amongst the multiple marketing companies that I've worked at, as well as that I've known, sometimes, and I'm not trying to say negative things about marketing companies, but sometimes they like to include new patients like as everything. And they don't differentiate what's a new patient from a referral or what's a new patient from marketing. So I would definitely make sure that they're tracking your new patients to marketing campaigns and not lumping all new patients together and kind of taking credit for that, if that makes sense.
How do you track that? Like a dedicated 800 number, or like, how do you track a new patient from marketing, like tactically?
You can give it a new phone number. It's a dynamic, or it used to be called a dynamic number, so that if they see the ad and they click on it to call, that dynamic number tells you it's from marketing. So there's ways to track it that way. There's also the traditional front desk, how did you hear about us? But what do we all say? Oh, I found you online. So what's the front desk person going to be like? Okay, well, where did you find us online? Was it Twitter? Was it X? Was it here? Like it's hard to sometimes get them to pinpoint it, but there are ways that they can attach metrics to it. I just think it's really important to make sure that they're transparent. Some people don't like to give all of their reporting. So if you work with a marketing company that's like, we're just going to show you, like, way back in the day, one of my reporting metrics was how long somebody spent time on site. How long is somebody on your website? That doesn't matter. Why? I mean, it does. Like, at least we want them to be there 2 minutes or longer. Then that means that we've got good content on the site. But like, ultimately, why am I telling people that? Like, that's like such a great metric. So and they're not terrible, but if that's all they're giving you, that's definitely not enough. And so I think making sure that the reporting is almost robust and detailed, I think that's what matters the most because it gives you transparency. So I would ask about their reporting.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. So I'm a dentist and I have 3 locations. I'm 10 to 15 years into my journey. Paid off all my student loan debt. I'm doing okay. I want to grow in implants. I just bought my 3rd location and I want to get it more, get some more activity in there. So how much would you charge me as a dentist? And let's say we go for a year. Sarah, I want you to grow my 3 practices. I'm going to give you 1 year to show me some fruit that Sarah can help me grow. What would the engagement look like? Maybe I know that maybe is a price range. And then what would you expect, assuming I'm a good doctor and I have decent chairside manner and I have decent staff that aren't chasing people out the door? Obviously, those fundamentals have to be in place. What's possible? Like, what's a realistic growth trajectory for me if we engaged for 1 year, and what would it cost me?
Well, it also depends on all the locations. Are they the same? Are they branded the same? Are they branded differently? Because then for instance, a DSO reached out to me. They're like, we have 12 locations, but they're all different brands. So they would want us to manage each brand individually, plus the doctor owner. So that can be
Cost
a
goes
lot.
up. It's like 12
Right.
clients.
Yes. So what I'll call per profile, so per entity, whether we're managing a company or we're managing someone's personal content, our price starts at $16.99 per month, and that includes 2 posts per week, daily outward engagement. We do 15 engagements, and that's a lot because it's kind of hard
What
to
does that
find people
mean?
to engage with.
Like reputation management? What do you mean by that?
We will go out. So if we're primarily focusing on Instagram, we would look for, organizations, a community, chamber of commerce, influencers in the industry, and we would outwardly engage with them so that we build awareness, not just by being in their comment section or commenting on their stuff, but in the comment section, people locally will see us. That's where the engagement part, I don't know very many marketing companies that offer that, and I get it because it's time consuming, but that is what makes the biggest difference. You're essentially just talking to your community and saying, hey, I've been to that restaurant, it's great. Or, hey, congrats on the grand opening. And people are just talking about Dr. Rob is like everywhere. So we would do content creation, outward engagement, and we also do in that $16.99 reporting, weekly meetings to talk about, oh goodness, if they're going to an event or strategy. If you have 3 locations, if you're a doctor owner and you have 3 locations, one, you're more than likely the highest producer of all of the practices that you have. I'm guessing if you're going to buy 3, you probably want to, not be reduce your time in chair. So now you've got you're buying another location, you're not practicing as much. So then I would also recommend clinicians in each of these practices, I would encourage them to build their personal brand on social media. So we could also give guidance and training for that.
So if we engage, let's assume I have 3 different branded locations or 3 different associate doctors that I want to get busy. So $16.99 per location. What kind of growth could we achieve? And I know there's probably a high low, but like, what are you seeing in an effective case?
In growing a corporate brand, it's a little bit slower, but when you put focus on you as a person, it can go fairly quickly. We started working with a small group of practices in Colorado, and we kind of put together this engagement strategy, which anybody can do. You can look up, and I know we keep talking about implants, but if you want to do more implants, look up the groups baby boomers would be in your area. And my gosh, I lost my train of thought. You asked me about the associates and building that brand and incorporating them into it. Was that the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah. What kind of
Kind of.
growth could we
Well,
anticipate?
I'm sorry. That's right. When you build your personal brand, it can go fairly quickly. And I've seen that on LinkedIn and I've seen that on Instagram, especially if you have a more personalized touch. So I think my answer is, I'm sorry, I'm going around in circles. It can happen a lot faster than people might think. So what does that mean? Depends. Do you want to post once a week? That's fine. It's really not about how much you post. It's about being consistent. But the faster you want to grow, the more you should post and the more you should engage. And I post 5 days a week, I engage every single day, and I'm constantly getting new connections, people reaching out to me. So I think it's whatever it is you want to do. Do you want to post 2 days a week? Do you want to post 5? Do you want to do 3 engagements? Do you want to do 15? So it the rate of growth depends on how much we can put into it. And again, I'm thinking of like personal pages that we've managed. It could be within like a week. She worked at a DSO. She was a consultant and she was trying to like grow her consultant business. But as soon as she just started talking, everybody was like, wow, we all know this person. We see her everywhere. And so I know I'm not specifically answering your question,
You're not.
but
Give me an example
no.
of like a case where it was really successful. Like, how many new patients did they get, or like a growth percentage over a 6 to 12 month period? Like, what's possible?
Over a 6 month period, and as far as gaining new patients, and I'm again not making excuses. That's the tough thing to determine. What I can, because again, unless they literally click on your profile or tell you we saw you on Instagram, it's a hard metric to measure. So a DSO reached out to me and we were talking about managing their corporate brand. And he asked me, he said, Sarah, how am I going to how do I know success with this? Will I be able to see it, or is it a feeling? And I thought that was a really great way to ask that, because it is
Yeah.
part of a feeling that, oh, I'm recognized. Maybe I'm recognized out in the space. They must be seeing my social media. So there is a portion of it that is kind of a feeling. But when I have helped people manage their personal social media, or I'm sorry, for a practice, the success that I've seen is oftentimes people, other local businesses, a injury lawyer who responded to a responded to a post from an oral surgery practice that we manage. That's good lead. An injury lawyer, like, I'm sure they deal with people who get in accidents and need, work on their
Yeah.
mouth. And so I at least look at that as a potential lead. And we've been able to manage and forge relationships with local, and oftentimes dentists might not realize like who is a good partner for them in their area. So we get to help them discover that, like, oh, you want more implant patients? There's this really cool, also the same example of this oral surgery practice. There's a really active, I don't like the term old folk home, like retirement community. And they're like always doing like fun activities. And so we've engaged with them and they've engaged back with us. And so we would potentially be like a referral for all of these people 60 and over that live in this neighborhood, not neighborhood, but this environment, just because we started engaging with them. So I'll acknowledge I am not 100% clearly answering your question, but
Nope.
it's a tough question to
Well, and
answer.
the larger the DSO, the more likely they're going to really want to know the ROI, because part of it, yes, it's holding you accountable for results, but the other part of it is, should I spend more? Right? Should I double my marketing budget? Should I have more resources to post more frequently? right? Like, because if the ROI is really high, well, then could we double our spend and still get the same ROI percentage, or maybe it'll dilute a little bit, but doubling our spend and our activity would actually be beneficial. So, I mean, there's the other dimension, one dimension is accountability to what I'm already spending, but should I spend more? I mean, when do you go to your customer, your partner, and say, hey, we're having really good success. We should up our game because we know we can get you more. Any metric for
I
that?
I I think again it depends on what's important to you. And so I know. I probably sound like obnoxious right now, but like for example, a client asked me, they were like, we want to grow in followers because we want more followers than our neighbor next door. That's how they measure success. Oh man, they just want to we want to beat them because we're competitors. So you can identify different numbers, but if you, when do we, it just depends on oh my gosh, I hate that I keep saying that. It depends. It does depend. Every situation is different, but what I would look for is if your engagement is going up consistently, maybe you have messages that you don't have time to get to. Like if it starts to become too time consuming for you to do for yourself, or if you really want to grow into hyper mode, I would say then let's post every day. Let's make sure the rest of the team is posting, like getting your ambassadors, getting, the still not answering it. I hope nobody
Well,
judges
I
me
would
for
say
that.
I'll help you off the ledge here, and most humans would agree if we are delivering generous and valuable content into our community that is benefiting them and engaging them, it's for sure going to bring some level of benefit. The harder question is, how valuable is that benefit financially to the practice, right? I'm spending X amount of dollars in my marketing team. I know it's going to bring me something. Should I spend more? Should I spend less and diversify to multi-site? I mean, I think it's the $1 million question, or the hardest one to answer for sure. And I know you're right. It depends on what you're measuring and what you value, like follower count and all that. But, you know, my reputation and my growth in the community, I want to improve it. I want to grow it, and I want to grow my practice. Is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it. But how worth it is it? And should I spend more? Like, if someone was calling you to complain about their current marketing company, you probably would ask them some questions to find out, like, are they going to complain about me, Sarah, too? Like, is this a client problem, or do they really have a bad marketing company? So, like, what would be some of the investigative questions to find out, could Sarah do a better job?
That's a good question. And it stinks that oftentimes people have had negative experiences with marketing companies in the past. So a lot of people are very hesitant. Like, are you one of those guys? And so if somebody were to come to me and complain about their existing marketing, or if they wanted to look for a new one, the questions that I would ask are, how well, what's your current state and what's your desired state? Because we talked about doing this for a year, what I would say to you is, you know what, Rob, okay, this is where we started. We've committed to doing this for a year. In 6 months, let's look at like our follower growth. Has that improved? Have we developed any partnerships locally with somebody that commented on our post? Because one good partnership with a retirement community and they come in for an all-on 4, I mean, you've
Yeah.
like paid for the entire year. So I would ask the question, what is it that you consider leads? Because sometimes, again, they'll include all new patients in one lump sum, and they're not. So I would make sure that they're differentiating that when they give you reporting with new patients, that's marketing patients. And What other questions would I ask? I'd ask them to define transparency to them. That's for sure. Because I feel like a lot of people say that word, but they're not. So I think that would be
Transparency to
important.
what? Transparency to what?
Transparency into reporting, or even I've heard some people have Google ads running, and when they've asked their marketing company details about it, they won't tell them. They won't share it with them. And it's like, why are you information gating? Like, share with me, be transparent. Okay, maybe this month
Yeah,
didn't do so well. Here's what we're going to do next month. So I think that's important. And also, it's not a deal breaker, and this is kind of a controversial topic, but it also depends on if your marketing company has dental experience or not.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
I
Dental is a nuanced industry, and how you speak to a dental patient is unique, and it's learned for sure.
I started working at a marketing company, and they wanted to grow in the DSO space. And so I was the only person on this team of 20 that had any dental experience. And I was looking at a website we were building for a doctor, and it said free deep cleaning was their actual offer, unique offer that we made up for them. And I was like, okay, first of all, ain't nothing fun about a deep cleaning. Like, no, they didn't, it's not like a deep tissue massage. This is scaling and root
Yeah,
planing.
no.
This is like totally different. So I did a lot of training with them as to how to understand the dental space. And I don't think it's impossible, but like you said, we're so nuanced. And I know people that will listen to this. I know people I'm friends with that don't have dental experience in our marketing company, our marketing at DSOs, but they're learning. That's like all that they're doing. So I think it's also important to ask and know what type of dental experience they have. I mean, again, it's not like it doesn't have to be a deal breaker, but I personally think it's important.
So there should be some metrics. We should see improvement in engagement to follower count, engagement count, all that kind of stuff. We should see some transparency into things that aren't going well, because in every plan, there are things that don't go according to plan or don't go well. You should report that and be transparent and say, yeah, don't spend money here because that's not going well. We'll reposition and go this direction. I agree with that. That's some good wisdom. Any final comments or final words of wisdom to a doctor trying to be better at social engagement through social media?
I do. And I actually wrote one thing down because we were talking earlier about having someone internally do it. I see so frequently that doctors will be like, hey, hygienist or front desk person, you're in charge of social media. You make the time. You figure it out. Please do not do that. Social media is a full-time job. So one, you now have in your practice a potential career path for somebody, right? And it could even be a hygienist who maybe has decided they don't want to be chairside, or they have developed carpal tunnel syndrome. And so now they have another potential place in this practice to go. And so I just want people to be mindful that social media is a full-time job. Please do not think that your hygienist or your RDA or your office manager has the time to do that and all of the other duties that they have. So make sure you set expectations with time and make sure you pay them for it. I think that's
I would
really
agree with that.
important.
They need to have some intentionality. It shouldn't just be by accident. But let's say a doctor has some staff, someone rises and is like, I really love social media. My guess is you would help coach them and help them be successful and then give them some guidance along the way.
Yes. And it's interesting. I feel like practices, so I do also work with industry partners, and sure, they might hire someone internally, but on the vendor side, we're all remote. We see each other at conferences. So like utilizing time on social media it's not a necessity to have somebody internally. I do think even if a practice were to engage with us, I would say who are we assigning as our on-site or our internal ambassador, because then we can get assets from them. We can talk about what things are coming up. And who knows, maybe after 6 months, that person is the one who wants to take it over internally because they've learned so much. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's understandable to want to have something in-house. I just want everybody to realize that that is a full-time job. Taking pictures, getting testimonials from patients, making sure that you're taking pictures, taking good before and after pictures. Like, it's trying, if you have multiple locations, trying to get assets is like pulling teeth, literally, pun intended. It's so hard. Like, hey, you guys had a barbecue. Just take a dang picture and send it to us. Yeah. But they're too busy. So that's where I think
someone's got to have
internally,
it top of mind. They've got to be thinking about it. It's got to be a part of their DNA for sure.
And if you're not paying them for it, it's not going to be. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, Sorry. You're right. You're right. Pay them for their time. Sarah, thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom. And where would someone reach out to you? Just Sarah at ourthrivetribe.co. That's where you're at, right?
Yeah. Yep. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm under Sarah Ruberg. I am always on LinkedIn too. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I love giving free advice. So
perfect.
Come find me.
Thank you for your time. I enjoyed the conversation.